A lot has changed since the last time I've spoken to you.
A priority to restrict gender-related health care for minors passed the Missouri Senate today.
One of the nation's toughest anti-trans bills is now law in Kentucky.
The killings of transgender women continue at a concerning rate.
The level of anti-trans rhetoric has spiked to frightening degrees.
For the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely.
And honestly, it's gotten to a point where I've pretty much reevaluated everything. I know in the past I have made statements where I kind of mocked the idea of a trans genocide.
I feel like there's a lot of fear-mongering. I don't feel like it's warranted.
While I don't believe that trans people are ever going to be locked up in camps, it has become more clear to me than ever that there is a serious danger in this country. You have a wave of hundreds of anti-LGBT legislation, and you have a culture that views transgender people as groomers, as pedophiles, as rapists, as shooters, as terrorists. All the worst labels you could identify to any group of people. It's clear as day. There is an entire group in this country that is just using my identity and others like me as a way to win votes, as a scapegoat. These are the people you need to hate. This is your new enemy. And I've had enough. I've hit a breaking point. And it's made me question, why do I bother? Why do I do what I do? And is it even worth it? Is it really so important to, go on here and cringe at these crazy people with these weird xenogenders? Is that really the most important thing I need to be doing? Like, my opinions haven't changed, but I guess my perspective has. I've kind of suddenly realized what really is important and what really needs to be focused on here. Going forward, I want to radically change the kind of content that I make and the kind of messaging that I put out. There's so many trans people who they feel this incessant need to call out every single wrong thing that a trans person does, or every single, bad thing, or a thing that could make a trans person look bad. And it's led me to have a lot of conflict, a lot of internal thought, and it's really the premise behind this video. It's this big crossroads that I've been at. Do I want to be the person that stands up and says, hey, these people in our community are bad actors and we need to dissociate from them? Or do I want to be the kind of person that says, I want to empathize with these people, I want to understand where they're coming from, and I want to humanize them? Maybe it seems like, well, the easy choice is to humanize and empathize, but it's more complicated than that. And I really want to be careful how I tackle this kind of conversation. Some of you may know, recently we've had a transgender shooter, and we've also had a second attempted one. Now, obviously, this has led too many to make alarming claims and alarming statements.
This is a threat. Allow us to castrate children or we will kill people. And we're supposed to just stay silent about this and roll over because we're too afraid?
This is a group that has for years been committing acts of violence at rates much higher than you would expect.
They've been grooming your children, and now they're shooting your children. A person willing to execute violence upon his or her own body will not hesitate to impart violence onto someone else's.
National Public Radio urging trans people to buy guns, and if necessary, to use them. The world is dangerous, explained one trans gun owner. You have to be dangerous back. Parts of the transgender movement seem to be getting militant. We seem to be watching the rise of trans terrorism.
So the Fox News clips that I just showed you, I watched those, and while watching it, I had a really weird feeling, because if some of you know me, you've seen me pop up in debates with these popular YouTubers talking about trans issues and such. One of the things that I have stood strongly for is that I have been very anti-gun, but a lot of these leftist spaces, there has been this trend to advocate for trans people owning guns, that in the state of violence being targeted against us, trans people need to be armed.
My advocacy for firearms mostly comes down to the fact that I think that civil unrest in this country is near inevitable, and if civil unrest is to take place, I would rather it not be exclusively the people who I disagree with who have firearms. Now, I'm mostly concerned with the right people having enough guns to defend their neighborhoods.
First of all, when you say the right people, I think that's very interesting and very telling.
Now, personally, I think that that's just a really flawed and dangerous idea. It reminds me of, conservatives saying that teachers need to be armed in order to stop school shootings. And my argument, obviously, is that's dystopian and insane. You're bringing more guns, which is just going to lead to more violence. And I feel like that is what we've seen here. Now, I'm not going to go as far as these pundits on the right, people who really only serve to provoke fear and hatred. I'm not gonna go as far as to say that these people are dangerous and, you know, trans people are gonna murder all the transphobes and conservatives out there. They just wanna stoke fear. The truth is, every group has violent members. The problem is when people use these acts to act like all members of such group are these evil terrorists. That kind of rhetoric that is just insane. And the problem is they know how to spin these things in a way to make it seem like being sympathetic to the trans community is to dismiss the other victims. It's just led to these very, very weird conversations. You know, just a few weeks ago, I tweeted out to respond to a pretty big leftist creator. Some that members of this channel know that I have a little bit of history with, but that's not relevant to the conversation here. Basically saying that trans people owning guns, the only thing that's gonna lead to is people using that fact and leveraging the tweets advocating for trans people to own guns against us. It's going to lead to an increased hatred and this rhetoric that we're gonna murder and kill, you know, innocent Christians. We're gonna murder and kill cisgender people.
The leftist creator says fascists already have guns. We need the good guys to have them too. And I say all arming trans people is going to do is allow the media to frame trans people as evil murderers when they fight back as well, which just adds more fuel to their fire to justify their genocide against us. Literally, it hasn't even been a month and it's already fucking happening.
I believe that we need to be consistent in our values here, and this idea that somebody can be left-wing, you know, want these violence to stop and prioritize it, yet still advocate that more guns is the answer, just feels very odd and hypocritical, and it's just not something that I like to see. But the problem is when I say that, they're like, oh, so you don't think minorities can defend themselves? Like, I get it. You know, realistically, it's gonna take a while to get guns banned, so that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, right? Doesn't mean that we should just give up and be like, well, actually, here, let's give everybody guns. Well, let's encourage more gun usage. You're just increasing a divide where both sides are now heavily equipped with guns. Both sides who, can I remind you, protest, counter protests.
Both sides clashed as Parker told police of more danger.
These kind of things happen all the time. But you put guns in the hands of people there? I mean, we saw what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse, right? You turn that situation into a potentially deadly one that will be fear-mongered by our political enemies, the people who want to take away our rights. It'll cause more fuel to their fire, more justification of violence against us, more justification of hatred, more justification of bigotry. It'll make them feel like their justifications were right. I've seen these things happen too many times. I know how these things go, and I hate seeing ignorance from people. You know how these people are gonna respond. This motivates people to turn against us. It motivates people to think that these anti-trans bills are actually sane and justified. I go to YouTube comments all the time. It seems like there's a lot of freaking people who are against trans people right now. And I don't think this is the hill to die on. They can call us hypocrites because that's what they are. There are hypocrites. But then I sit down and I think to myself, like, I don't know, is this really where the energy needs to be focused on? Like, why am I spending more time focusing on the bad actors of the leftist community than like the people who are basically calling trans people every bad name in the book? I don't know. Earlier in the video when I said that that choice seemed obvious, maybe it does. And maybe it is the right choice. Maybe me doing this, what I'm doing, sitting here right now, am I part of the problem? Am I going to cause more people to turn anti-LGBT because I'm just uplifting and spreading these ideas that there are dangerous people on the left? Am I doing the same thing as them, even though I tend to think I distinguish myself from those people? Maybe I don't. So is it even morally justified for me to make this video right now?
I've been intimidated, threatened, bullied.
Most of the trans community has been extremely civil in their response to radical feminists. There's trans people out there who act like J.K. Rowling isn't even transphobic, which is ridiculous if you've read anything that she's posted in the past few years. There's people who assume the best in these bad faith actors. Then of course there's the other side. You'll commonly see people post how the trans community threatened violence on them. They send nasty messages, you know, threatening the lives of TERFs.
As I kill TERFs with a laptop, now I feel worse. JK, hope you fit in the hearse.
bitch. And my response is simply this. If you've been on Twitter, you'll know that, for instance, let's say you post a tweet about how you don't like K-pop. You don't like BTS. You'll get death threats. If you come out and say that you don't like somebody's favorite musical artist, people will respond in some of the craziest ways that you've ever seen. Fan bases are crazy.
Dear Melanie Martinez stans, specifically stan Twitter accounts, no matter how many death threats you send my fiance, no matter how many times you spam and create images of me and her and do all this awful shit.
The issue isn't trans people. The issue is fucking Twitter. I think that's pretty clear. But when it comes to trans people, I feel like the anger is at least somewhat justified, because these accounts, essentially what they sit and do all day is they talk about how trans people are the reason why women's rights are being overturned and that we're all the evils in society. They basically exist to create a hostile environment for trans people. So I can completely understand how a trans person who's being attacked on pretty much every front kind of lose it, could kind of get sick and tired of constantly being treated like shit, constantly being told that you're this evil, terrible person just for existing. So truly speaking, what you have to understand about these people is that they're often the ones that initiate the conflict, specifically by the things that they post. But they're very good manipulators. They're very good at crying and playing the victim after literally advocating against the rights for an entire group of people. These people know how to press all the right buttons to say that they're actually liberals, they're actually feminists, they're all the right things, and that their hatred for trans people isn't hatred for trans people, it's protecting women. Now I'm going to assume that people watching me know that trans exclusionary radical feminists are bad, but if you still aren't convinced, then I can make another video debunking their lies if you need me to. This video is going to be long enough as it is. The point is that I can look at that situation and see that these individual tweets are a little over the edge. They're pretty bad. I think that it's never excusable to threaten anybody's life under any circumstance. Even if, let's be honest, like all these Twitter threads are empty threats. A K-pop fan telling me to end my life after saying that I don't like BTS. I don't genuinely fear my life. Like, I've been on the internet long enough to know this, right? It's not excusing what these people are saying. It's just putting it into perspective. This all brings me back to a conversation that I've had with somebody that some of you on this channel may know very well, and that is a person by the name of Lavlune.
So what if someone honestly told you, like, you're a trans woman and I'm scared of you because you're a male?
You're only scared of me because of being trans, which I think is
yeah,
a
but
huge
you just
problem.
said that you
One day this person's gonna go down the radfem circle and then they're just gonna suddenly hate me because I've had so many people turn against me. The beliefs that you share today, I do believe that there's some transphobic stuff in there.
And this is where I get transphobic. Just kidding.
Essentially, I randomly winded up talking to her after, talking to someone named Zanya and having a conversation with her. And then I essentially heard her talking points and they seemed very TERFy to me. But Zonia and all the people that I was surrounded myself with convinced me that she wasn't actually a TERF and that I should give her the benefit of the doubt and to give her the chance. And you know what? I don't typically like to jump on people and assume the worst in them, so I tried to be good faith with her. I tried to understand her, and at first it seemed fine. I had my suspicions, and they were later proven to be right down the line. She was very good at appearing that she was accepting. Now, over the months, I would come to find that she would follow, like, retweet crazy things by TERF accounts, and eventually she would respond to me saying this: what is the difference between a feminine man and a trans woman? This conversation just kept continuing. She says, living as a woman and being one feel different to me. I respond, you don't think I'm a woman. You think it's just biology. She says, I think you live as a woman. I think the term woman or female is just biological fact. The only thing that makes women is being female, biologically female. And I say that I don't believe you need to be biologically female to be a woman. And she says, you just need to have long hair, wear makeup, and have boobs. The idea, the implication being, the way that we express ourselves is somehow harmful to cisgender women. There is no feeling that makes someone a woman or man. I think it's fucked that trans women think looking fuckable and feminine to men makes you a woman. I say, you don't think I can identify as a woman? You don't think my gender identity is valid? And she says, you are a trans woman. You can identify as something you're not. You are not a woman. You're a trans woman. Can you identify as French if you're Spanish? Woman means female. Trans women are not female. It's not an identity. It's a biological fact. And then here's the big one here. I say, I don't see how my existence as a woman is regressive or hurts biological women in any way. Yet it feels to me like you think it does. Why? And then she says, because you think you're a woman based on arbitrary gender rules that hurt women. And I just say, I don't know how to respond to this. It's just sad. My existence and my identity as a woman doesn't hurt biological women in any way. And then she says, it does. The insistence that you can just be a woman if you are pretty and have long hair and take HRT to give yourselves breasts is regressive. You've essentially made yourself intersex with hormones and live as or like what conservatives say a woman is, an object. This framing that trans women are attacking feminism while ironically aligning strongly with the beliefs of people who are extremely anti-feminist. I mean, people like Matt Walsh. I mean, most of the people who argue and advocate for these anti-trans rhetoric are some of the most anti-feminist people out there. But okay, I'm not gonna lie, it hurt to hear people say things like this to me. And this particular individual was criticized for many other things. The point I'm trying to make is engaging with these people is tricky. Is it even worth it? When anything that you say or do will be used against you. But if you ignore it, you act like you're not acknowledging it. It's a trap. It feels like no matter what trans people do, we can't win. We have these debates on the internet all the time about these sorts of things. And while I do think they're valuable, transphobes aren't gonna watch them. They're not gonna care. The people we need to win over are still gonna do what they're doing. I can have a very heartfelt conversation with someone who's anti-trans, and I could have the best points in the world. And the person will still leave the conversation, continue to spew their rhetoric the next day like nothing ever happened. It's happened to me so many times. And it's so sad because there's like no trans people in the media. Like the most famous trans people are the people that do terrible things. And that needs to be changed. Most people don't know a trans person in their life. And that's why I think it is valuable for me to go talk to these people who people can view as conservative, transphobic, whatever. Because maybe there's somebody in that audience who hears my voice and they're maybe a little bit less transphobic as a result. At least I can only hope. Then there's the other half entirely. I see so many people in trans Twitter spew this weird autogynephilia and heterosexual transsexual, this idea that trans people are exclusively in one of these two camps. Either we're all fetishists who are attracted to ourselves as women and we transition to fulfill that fetish, or we're essentially gay men who are like extreme gay men. That those are the only two things that exist. And they don't see the problem that it's like transphobic pseudoscience. They don't see the problem in it. And I go crazy with these people online. And it just feels like the plot has been lost so many times. Again, I don't think I need to explain why it's all pseudoscience, but if you want me to make another video about it in the future, I'd be more than happy to. Well, that brings me to the main point of this video, which I'm probably gonna wind up calling something like some books should be banned. I've talked a bit in the past about drag queens, about how drag queens, you know, performing in front of children, I kind of tend to think that's a bad thing. Drag in general, I'm just not a fan personally. And that's a whole another conversation. I've talked about it many times. I'd be more than happy to give my take. But some of these drag queens have been reading books to kids, and some of these books have been gay or trans themed in nature.
Drag queen story time. Some public schools and libraries invite drag queens, some dressed like horned demons, to read to young children.
And it's a social deconstructionist agenda. They're using children, little 5-year-olds, to accomplish this.
There are people whose gender might be a little bit of both, or might even be neither.
I think most people here can agree that it's not a bad thing to teach kids that it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be trans. I don't want to get the wrong impression that that's what this video is about. That what I'm basically saying here is that we shouldn't indoctrinate the youth into LGBT like some other YouTubers would say. And the truth of the matter is, if these books were really all of just that, then I wouldn't be making this video. The reason I'm making this video is because recently I've seen books that are very sexual in nature in public schools.
Stephanie Butler says her daughter checked this book out today at Edsel Ford High School. It's titled Flamer. It depicts sexually explicit acts between young boys, some with graphic descriptions.
You know, when you put something in a kid's mind, it makes them want to do it more or try it.
Do you think there should be some literature that helps students who are navigating sexual identity or not?
Oh, absolutely. But if these were just LGBT kid romance novels, that is totally appropriate. Totally appropriate. Where I draw the line is guides on teaching them how to actually do the act.
14-year-olds can go check these books out, not be aware about the explicit nature of the books, and be exposed to content that they shouldn't be. The problem is that most of the people talking about this kind of stuff are people who have bad intentions in mind. A lot of people who, let's be honest, even if the book were just simple gay people kissing, gay people saying that it was okay for them to exist, there would be certain crowds that would argue family values.
And the amount of our kids that are turning that way, it's
turning
not
what way?
Turning, you know, gay.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Learn something from this.
Anyway, in this Vice video, they bring up a book called Flamer. Hearing the way it was described made me realize I really needed to do a deep dive on this thing because I don't really think anyone else really has. They show a page from the book that was a bit concerning. It was essentially kids masturbating in a bottle.
One of the biggest sources of tension is a single page in the book Flamer, where some kids are playing a prank on the main character, pretending to masturbate into a bottle and telling him that the person who doesn't climax has to drink it.
And then you read the books? I don't want to read the whole book. Why? It's just a moral thing with me.
We're each busting a load into this bottle. If you don't come, you have to drink it. Ha 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 ha.
The context of it, what does that refer to?
You don't know the context because you haven't read the page before or the page after.
But what? Bruh.
If you had kids, do you think this book would make your kids drink cum?
What the actual fuck did you just say to me right now?
My kids, first of all, will not be reading those types of books. When someone is 18, they could do whatever they want.
Drink as much cum as they want.
You're weird, buddy. You're weird.
Look, I'm a trans woman and I consider myself to be pretty progressive, but like, I don't think children should be reading this. And if they are, it should at least be something that like the parents have like consent on first. I don't think that's a radical or conservative take. Honestly, I think that's very fair. And the amount of defensiveness I see towards this book is very concerning to me and very odd. I think because people tend to believe that anything that can be perceived as anti-LGBT is to be bigoted and disregarded and is just bad faith in general, whereas I think there are some actual genuine arguments that I personally agree with as to why this book shouldn't be on public school shelves. And personally, I don't think this is the hill we should be dying on, but that's just me. So this guy basically goes to these parents and he's basically like, oh yeah, well, we'll checkmate, bigot. That's the only page you know? You didn't actually read the book, as if any context makes this okay, but actually it challenged me. It made me think, if they're not gonna read the book, then I'm going to. And I'm going to provide mountains of evidence of other pages from this book that are just as bad as this, just to show these people, yeah, it's not just this one isolated thing. Because even though that's a stupid argument, it's an argument that I wanted to confront. So I found the guy from the Vice video who was saying these things, and I messaged him on Instagram with the other pages of the book that I had found. Of course, I never got a response. Doesn't shock me. I was thinking maybe we could have a conversation, but because I'd actually read the book and I wasn't gonna look bad or embarrass myself on camera, you wouldn't talk to me. Whatever, right? And so essentially,
I managed to track down
the book that I could read for free without buying it online, and I was like, great, now let me look through this. What I had found, there were just constant adult jokes, constant sexual references. It wasn't just a simple story about a gay boy finding himself, which would be completely fine, by the way. I have no issue with that. That's great. I understand that could help people. But it was just written in a way where it's like, if you're the author of this book and you're saying that this is a book for children, I'm concerned. So in the book, there is a page where one of the bullies, right, does your typical bully stuff. Except he makes a comment being like, hey, have you sucked any good dicks lately? And then there's another part in the book where they're canoeing to an island, and then there's a big joke that quote unquote, it supposedly looks like a frying pan, but we're certain it all looks like a cock and balls. Here's another one. There's a scene in the book where they have hot dogs. And this kid says, what's wrong? I thought you liked a big sausage in your mouth. Haha. And then there's another scene where they attach these long sticks with a sausage on them, and then they place it on the children's like genital area. And then they like make jokes, like visual gags about the fact that it looks like they're having sex with the hot dogs, with the sausage wieners. Jesus, I'm just kidding. Don't be so touchy, you guys. Check this out. weenie roast. And you can clearly see this. And then this continues in a second one that's even more blatant and sexual than the other, where this kid goes, okay, who wants my hot wiener? And then the other kid is like, oh yeah, baby, slide it right into my buns. Clearly, this is an anal sex, blatant as it is, reference. And then the main character is just like, oh, you guys are so gross. You know what's gross? Subjecting this shit to 14-year-olds without their parents' knowledge or permission.
And it gets so much worse. Oh my god. So first of all, on page 74, the main character is, and what if someone thinks my penis is small? I mean, it's not microscopic, but there's the age-old shrinkage dilemma. Something that we love children to be reading. Okay. Even worse than someone seeing me naked is seeing others naked. It's so scary. I'm so worried that if someone catches me looking at them, they'll think, I don't know, that I wanted to look. And then there's a picture with a bunch of like teen boys drawn naked in the shower. Ew.
It's like one step below blatant porn. It literally fucking is.
And then there's another scene where it's like, and I don't want to look. Just look down, just look down. And then another boy goes, oops, I dropped the soap. Don't get any ideas, boys. Just look up, just look up. I am in awe. I am in utter disbelief. This goes so far beyond the level that I thought this was. This is disgusting. Another page. Oh no, I think I'm getting a boner. Ow, I mean, my back. This shit is blatant. The main character then asks, I wonder if priests jerk off. Damn, it's so unholy. And look, while we're at it, I'm just gonna list like all this shit. There's another scene in the book where this camp director mentions like parts of a archery thing, and then they're like sexual things, and the boys are laughing like, oh, finally the tip is referred to as the head, and they're like giggling their asses off, you know, and they're like, oh, do we have a problem? What's so funny? Here they make comments referring to a woman by mentioning that she has a nice ass, and how's her rack? Is she stacked? And then this dude mentions that he has a boner. Again, straight stuff, still just as disgusting. Make sure you talk to her face and not her boobs. Not only is this grossly sexual, it's also like just gross in general. This scene talks about, I mean, they use the F slur for gay people multiple times. Here they say pencil dick as an insult. Have fun sucking each other's dicks, ladies. And of course, these are the bullies and they're saying this stuff. Anyway, I'm on page 122. Do I need to go further, guys? Is this enough for you? Or do you need me to keep reading the book? The book is about 360 pages long. So everything that I've just mentioned is the first 120 pages. Then at page 131, we have the infamous masturbation bottle.
We're each busting a load into this bottle. If you don't come, you have to drink it. Ha 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 ha.
The context of it, what does that refer to?
You don't know the context because you haven't read the page before or the page after.
But the page following 132 explains in detail about how he learned about masturbation. Here we go. I learned about masturbation 2 years ago, kind of by accident. Nobody had ever told me what it was. One day when everyone was out of the house, I came across a videotape hidden behind the TV. My dad had hidden movies before with dirty scenes, like Fatal Attraction. It was exciting to see boobs and butts, but this time it was different. I could see everything. People were doing things that I didn't even know were possible or even allowed. Why is there so much hair? Those dicks are so big. I started watching my dad's porn a lot while I was naked, and eventually I stumbled upon a surprise sensation. What? Oh, it felt good, but then I felt really guilty about it. I knew watching porn was against the rules, so this new feeling had to be a sin. And now here I am in this tent full of people jerking off, and I feel like I'm in mortal danger. Oh yeah, oh baby.
You don't know the context because you haven't read the page before or the page after.
Well, what does...
That's the one about coming in a bottle and drinking it and, you know, masturbation and this and that.
Also about saving someone who's trying to commit suicide.
But
an
they can
ultimate
do that
one.
without the sex.
You're picking one page. One page.
Disgusting. Who writes this shit? If you're defending the book after this point, then I don't know. Because if at this point you're not convinced, I don't think me going on for another 10 minutes is going to do anything for you.
And again, it's like, oh, well, you only hate it because it's gay. No, if it was a straight thing, if it was the exact same shit, but it was a children's story that mentioned straight genitalia, straight sex in the same way, it would be just as disgusting.
I mean, our ultimate goal is to like stop sexualizing the kids and just let them be kids.
Our children are being at risk. They're being groomed. Who puts this kind of stuff in schools?
It is straight up porn.
Public schools have vivid pornography in it, and these cops won't do anything about it.
You worried about the gay people? No problem. We're not worried about the gay people. We're worried about our children.
Then people will be like, well, children are exposed to things like this all the time. They're exposed to dirty jokes. This wouldn't shock them. Excuse me? I don't understand this argument. Yeah, the kids have access to the internet. Yeah, sometimes they see things they shouldn't see. But should we be encouraging this? Should we be making this available in our schools? I really do not get this line of thinking. I really don't. And it's like, I think that we have a responsibility to call this out. It wasn't a thing where it was just like an offhand page or two. From what I read, this was a consistent theme throughout the book. It was a lot of the content is just stuff like this. But the author and the people defending this book have this idea that it's important for LGBT youth to grow and develop, and this could be helpful to have.
One Iowa says they may play a vital role in self-discovery in kids and young adults.
It's very disheartening because what LGBTQ students and non-LGBTQ students really need in the literature that they consume and the things that they have access to is to be able to see themselves and their peers.
Moet shares it was very eye-opening for him to have access to certain materials when they were growing up. Books that chronicle the experience of LGBTQ youth can help many feel seen and valid.
This Book is Gay is one title in particular that really upset Butler. She even reported it to Dearborn Police. Paul Bruce, a former teacher with the district, says the book has educational value.
It answers so many questions I wish could have been answered for me as a child. My life would have been so much better.
The book covers topics like how to join dating apps and how to talk to people who identify as Christian or Muslim about your sexuality.
You have to be able to address those concerns. How do you stay safe?
We have other parents that say, no, we want this material for my kids. What about my kids that are in those nominal groups? We want that material for them. Why should they be deprived? What we've said is you can make a decision on your child, but you don't get a right to make a decision on every other child in the district. I mean, I think it's a slippery slope. You got to be careful. Where do you draw the line? Where does it end?
A curriculum that teaches public school students to celebrate the homosexual lifestyle and that gender is fluid.
Two books that have drawn the most controversy here, This Book is Gay and Flamer, are both about teens struggling with their sexuality.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, you can make a book that is about gay people that doesn't have blatant sexual. It can be done, and it has been done. So the need to defend this book particularly is very weird. How about you just don't put it in your library? There are many, many clips of parents addressing their concerns. And I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of parents who, they have concerns, and those concerns are essentially they don't want gay stuff in their children's curriculum. That's a conversation. But I hear the parents talk about this, and I'm thinking to myself, these people aren't bigots.
Genderqueer depicted a sexually explicit cartoon one parent displayed to the board.
This is also in the book, Genderqueer at Northwest High School, available for children as young as 14 years old.
During that school board meeting Monday, one parent said any child can pick up these books that display explicit content, as their covers can be misleading.
These books may appear innocent. However, when you dig in, you find much, much more.
Genderqueer explains the journey of a non-binary asexual teen navigating their way through their sexuality. And Lawn Boy details sexual encounters the main character has with another male character.
As you've seen throughout this video, there are many actual bigoted people. We shouldn't be putting our focus onto this. Some books should be banned, but here's the issue. We all know that Nazi Germany banned books in certain cultures. All books that mentioned anything LGBT or Jewish or anything regarding those kinds of culture, those books were specifically targeted and our histories were essentially erased. There's so many amounts of knowledge that we'll lose because of those awful book burnings, and obviously those were kind of one of the first signs of what is to come. Now, what I've seen people argue is stuff like this. Books being banned is a little bit reminiscent of that. I think there's a tiny bit of validity to that. I can understand where that comes from. That being said, when you look at the vast majority of people on this issue, you can see that there's a lot of people who don't have this intent. And so while you can use the sunken cost fallacy all you want to say that this would be the start of many things, I think it is actually better for our movement to acknowledge that there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed. I think we should encourage LGBT acceptance within our youth. I just don't think that this is the way to do it and that we can do it better. There's some, history that we can look on and we can be cautious about these things and we can look at precedents and make sure that we don't go down the same path again. It's in my best interest to make sure that we don't go down that path, and it is a very fearful time. What are the parallels? I don't know. It's tough because the context is different too, but undeniably some of that's here. And I don't want to look like I'm supporting that. I don't want to look like I'm supporting hate against my own community. But there's another book as well. It's not just Flamer. There's many books, but another book called This Book is Gay. The majority of the content of this book is essentially to educate people on what it is like to be homosexual. And I understand how that could be a helpful resource, especially to a kid who their parents are very strict. They've taught them, you know, religious beliefs that being gay is a sin and that they shouldn't engage. I can understand how they could really need this education and how it could be so crucial to them. I get that. And I think that having it in a school library where they're safe to do that, I think that could be a very valuable thing. Problem, and I'm telling you, the huge problem is some of the content that is in these books.
The following books have been formally challenged. This book is gay.
How is this representing the LGBT youth community? Do they want to be represented as a bunch of like sexual deviants?
And it's so bad because it gives transphobes so much fuel, and we have to be better than this. There's a drawing of, I can't even show this on screen. If I can't show it to you, I don't think we should show it to our children. It's essentially a guy who is naked, and there's a drawing of his genitalia, and then they go into detail about the parts. And look, sex education is a thing. This isn't sex education. The parents should be informed and should be able to consent to whether the child breathes the specific part. If you have the same exact book and it doesn't mention sex, it's fine and it's probably good. And then it goes on to explain sex apps, like explains how to use them, like it's encouraging this sort of behavior. It mentions anal sex. They go into detail, explicit detail about how anal sex works, about sex positions, who's on top, who's on bottom, about the certain part going into the other part.
And look, these passages get very explicit. I don't feel comfortable reading them, but feel free to pause and read them yourself. There's also a part of the book that explicitly encourages the usage of porn, which I find to be disgusting. Quote, basically porn is fine and fun, not something that we should be encouraging our children. Also can't go without mentioning the casual reference of sex in sweaty underground layers. Odd.
And I saw a comment basically saying, I'll just leave this right here, as if it kind of debunks the point. The chapter is called The In and Outs of Gay Sex. This chapter is about sex, therefore it has sex in it. Well, duh. If you are a younger reader and you aren't ready for the finer details of same-sex pairings, then simply skip this whole chapter. Now, I don't know if you know what it was like to be a child, but telling somebody, hey, this is inappropriate, skip over this, has that ever fucking worked on anybody? If anything, it makes them want to do it more. And I'm sorry, this is not like good enough. It's not like we have successfully avoided all minors from seeing sexual content. We did it, guys. No, I'm fucking sorry. And the fact that anyone would look at that and think that that was a justified response, just be like, oh yeah, see, all this stuff is fine because if you're young, the book tells you, skip it over. How about this? Remove the chapter about sex from the school version of these books. Makes more than sense. And if they're unwilling to do that, guess fucking what? Don't put the books in your schools. It just seems so obvious to me that this is a problem. But this continues. However, before you do, and this is where it gets worse, I'd like to remind you that we taught you all about straight sex when you were 10 years old during year 6. The fact that they also didn't teach you about same-sex couples is nothing less than institutionalized homophobia. Straight sex was presented as the norm to make 5% of the population feel abnormal. Is there something icky about gay sex? Is there something wrong with it? I will challenge any politician to discuss this with me. I will ruin them! All capitalizations. This chapter is simply all the stuff teachers should be saying if they want to be inclusive of people with same sex. Now that's fucking weird. And I get it. Safe sex includes all sexualities. But guess what? It's not fucking your job, you book writer. You want to fix sex ed to make it more inclusive? Go for it. This is not that. And I don't trust you to, teach the kids. And even though we expose kids to sex ed in order to try to protect them, we know that we shouldn't be exposing our kids to sexual stuff in general, right? I think we can all agree that 50 Shades of Grey should not be in school shelves. It's about straight sex, not gay sex, straight sex. But we all know that books like that should not be in the hands of children because of the sexual content in them, but because it's gay sex. There's this idea that, gay people aren't being taught about this kind of stuff, that this is somehow justified, but it's not. Two wrongs do not make a right in this situation. Here's another thing, okay? Part 1, boy on boy sex. Here is a diagram of a boy. If you are also a boy, you are probably aware which parts feel nice when you touch them, but here's a rough guide. I have no idea who the fuck writes this and thinks it's okay. I know, encouraged for children to read them. And is so proud of themselves too. It's disgusting.
So I also want to briefly mention this book called All Boys Aren't Blue, because it's another book that a lot of these videos mention.
Does equity and inclusion also include incestuous relationships, child-adult sex, and books that promote pedophilia?
McClanahan is referring to a book at Waukees Northwest High School library titled All Boys Aren't Blue. The text describes an inappropriate sexual relationship between the young main character and his much older male cousin.
Tonight, parents in KDISD read aloud passages from books that are too graphic to air on local television.
It is straight up porn.
These parents argue the sexually explicit material does not reflect healthy relationships and could misguide teens who read about these fictional sexual encounters.
And looking into it, it is so much worse than I thought. Now, you can argue that the book can be important for adults to read and, you know, maybe can help them understand their experiences, but the book is essentially a boy who is basically raped by his cousin, and the book goes into explicit detail about the sexual things that occurred and how the rape took place and the conflicting feelings about like them being family, and it's just so much sexual stuff, like the most sexually explicit things you can imagine. I don't even want to read this out loud because of how explicit it is, but I have it on screen right now if you want to pause it and read it. But besides that, I'm going to continue with the video. Just know that this is the book that they're talking about.
Why do you think that people are calling trans people groomers? It's obviously not true. No one's grooming your children. No one's forcing them to be trans. No one told me what being a trans was. I just knew that I was a woman, and I had to basically teach my parents about the whole concept, and they learned to be more accepting over time. This idea that people are being groomed into being trans, you have no idea what you're talking about. But the reason that these misconceptions occur is because of books like this, and because of a culture and a society that encourages it and sees it as a positive. And I think that there are certain points where we should stand up and I think and say some books should be banned. There are certain lines that you shouldn't cross. Do we keep our principles? You know, let's not address anything that is anti-LGBT. Let's consistently stay pro-LGBT, or do we shun stuff like this that makes our movement look bad? That's the point I want to come to, the conclusions I want to make. This is the conflict that I've been having internally for a long time now. When I see stuff like this that makes our community look so bad, and when I'm going in the future and I'm making videos like this, do I want to be the person that calls this out, or do I want to be the person that gives it the most positive light? By making this video, it seems like I've made a choice. It seems like I've already steered down the line that I'm going to keep making videos that essentially boil down to gay person did bad thing, trans person did bad thing. And I cannot stress this enough, how uncomfortable that concept makes me. That is not the kind of YouTuber or the kind of person that I want to become. On Twitter, oftentimes I will stick up for trans people who are often hated, sometimes unfairly, sometimes not as unfairly. People who I never really feel like were given that chance. I believe in rehabilitation, and I believe that because they're trans, they're being treated a little more harshly than most. Doesn't mean that I just never address this again. Does the existence of other more bad faith creators talking about the same issue mean that me talking about this is actually a good because it can provide the same experience but in a way that's less hateful? Or am I only contributing more to the hatefulness and my video serves as a justification for their views? Even if what I say isn't as extreme, it can be misconstrued to act like I agree with their more vile and disturbing transphobic beliefs. I don't know. It's a complicated issue. What I do know is this. I want to change and move the direction of my channel. I want to get it all off my chest one last time, one last video. In the future, I want to focus on more positive things. I want to be more uplifting. I want to be a trans creator on this app that people know, a more positive voice that people can look to, that I'm not always so focused on the doom and the gloom. I don't know what the future of this channel is going to be, but I do know that in 2023 and going forward, that the types of videos that I make are going to be radically different. I've had so many ideas for topics that I've wanted to make, but I've been scared to, because, you know, if my video gets less than 1,000 views, then why do I even bother if nobody's gonna see it? I just get very self-conscious, but I feel like I have to get out of my shell. I have to start posting more. I can't just sit on these types of ideas for months, you know, just waiting for the right opportunity to hop on this high button topic, not posting a video unless I guarantee it's gonna get, you know, a lot of views. I think I just need to be more authentic and more genuine. I feel like a lot of people in this community see me as someone that I'm not, and I'm really deeply ashamed of that. A lot of people don't view me genuine. I feel like people in this community never really gave me that chance. If you guys have any ideas for me and the type of content you'd want to see from me in the future, please comment down below as I navigate the shift. But what I do know is that I don't want to be known for, and I don't want to be defined for the things that I'm currently known for and defined by many people. I think that I owe myself and I owe all trans people to be better. And everything that's happened recently, all the waves of hate, all the anti-trans legislation has just really made me realize that there's surely going to be more conversations like this in the future, more trans people acting crazy on Twitter, more calls that were causing violence. But I don't think that it's good for my mental health to be stuck in this spiral. I'm about to graduate college. I have so many things to look forward to, and constantly I just feel like I'm hitting rock bottom, like I'm hitting a low, like life could not be anything worse, that there's no future for me. You know, I'm about to enter the workforce, and I'm so deeply afraid of it. I'm so deeply afraid of what my life is going to be. I've graduated college, my grades are good, I should be fine, but it's not like that. I don't feel fine. I feel more scared and more afraid than I ever have. And really, I just want to have conversations. I want people to start seeing me as a human being again. And if I'm not posting, then nobody sees me. So I might not get a lot of views for some of the videos that I make. It might not be the content that some people are certainly interested in. But I've just gotta do what makes me happy. I gotta start showing myself and be known for the things that I want to be known for. I need to start controlling my own path, controlling my own destiny. And I hope that you guys can support me moving forward. Thank you for watching this video. It's Rose Mulet. I'll see you guys next time.
Chris Hansen here. I have a message for you, Rose Mulet. Thank you for the wonderful entertainment you have provided us with. I'm gonna need you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Rose Mulet.
Warning, very sad. Why don't I have 1 million subs yet? This isn't fair, give me subs. If you wanted sandwiches you could have just asked. Or you could subscribe to Rose Mulet's channel. I think I'll take the sandwiches.
Is this really what you want or what you wanted? Give me everything and treat me like it's nothing. Is it nothing? It's the party in the Illuminati. If you really think it, tell me, is it what it? And if you think it isn't what you wanted, everybody is wondering why there could be nothing. Oh, is it nothing?